Thank you so much for joining the first paper session for today. We have 5 papers today. Each paper presentation will be for 12 minutes, and we'll have about 3 minutes for audience questions. So let's get started. Since we don't have a lot of time, and sometimes some people might take slightly more than the 12 minutes. So our first paper is by Joe Bates and Itzel Medina Pereira from the University of Sheffield, UK. The title of the paper is Beliefs, Values, and Emotions in Pharmaceutical Practitioners' Engagements with Narrow AI Adoption. Take it away, Joe and Itzel. You want to share?
Yes. Yeah, I'm just going to share the slides. Okay. So hi everybody, my name is Joe Bates. I'm presenting today with Itzel Medina Pereira, and we're going to be discussing work that we've been undertaking on a project called Patterns in Practice, which is exploring the integration of data mining and machine learning into different contexts of practice. Slide. So there's been a small amount of existing research examining things like the data mining, machine learning, and AI in practice. Recently, this work has tended to focus on issues such as embedding fairness, accountability, transparency, ethics and safety frameworks into working practices. And there's also been some work on the impact of AI on working lives and how AI, the integration of AI is being negotiated into workflows. So on patterns in practice, what we're trying to do really is build on the latter of these domains. Slide. Moving beyond quite general accounts to explore in depth how practitioners' beliefs, values, and emotions are shaping how they're engaging with machine learning techniques in practice. We're looking at this across 3 contrasting domains. So the first case that we're exploring is in the context of science, and we're looking specifically at pharmaceuticals and the use of AI and machine learning in drug discovery processes. The second case is in the field of education, and we're looking at the use of learning analytics in higher education in the UK. And the third case is in the arts. So we're looking at the use of AI in arts practice. So across these 3 cases, we've got the sort of scientific approach to using machine learning, a more sort of social, personal data type approach in education, and a more creative practice approach in the arts. In this presentation, we're going to be focusing on the first of these cases, and we're going to be discussing some of our emergent findings from work that we've been doing with the pharmaceutical company GSK, that use a lot of machine learning in their drug discovery processes. Slide. So just a little bit of background about how machine learning is used in drug discovery. It's used for a variety of aims, for example, the study of drug properties, prediction of interactions between compounds, and predicting how people may respond to different drugs. Slide. Now, although there's been a lot of excitement over the last few years about the adoption of machine learning and AI techniques within this field, really beginning at the sort of late 20th century, turn of the century time period, this isn't a new thing within the drug discovery field. So there's been a number of sort of waves over the years, with the first peak in the 50s, 60s, before interest sort of waned off a little bit, and then another peak in the early 80s before this most recent sort of wave of excitement. Okay, next slide. Now, we don't have much time to discuss our theoretical framework for the study in this talk. There's a little bit more about it in the paper if you're interested. But in brief, our approach to thinking about beliefs, values, and emotions of practitioners draws on theory that recognises the intertwined nature of values, beliefs, and emotions in the constitution of social phenomena. And this is in contrast to, for example, approaches that see emotion as and reason as really quite binary entities. Slide. So the empirical work that we've been doing on the project is made up of a combination of interviews, focus groups, and observations. So in this part of the research with GSK and in the pharmaceutical industry, we've interviewed 18 participants that are working in a number of roles within the drug discovery pipeline. So we've interviewed computational chemists, medicinal chemists, so the wet lab chemists that are supposed to act on the results of the computational work, and the scientific managers that managing this integration of AI. And we've done this across 3 different projects that GSK are working on at the moment. We've also run 2 focus groups, which brings together practitioners in these different roles to explore some of the tensions and topics that have been coming up in the interviews. And then there's a set of observations as well, which really are about trying to put the understanding that we've gained from interviews and focus groups into the sort of organisational context of GSK. So I'm going to hand over to Itzel now, who is going to talk about some of the emergent findings that are coming out of the project. Thank you, Itzel.
So yeah, I think you can hear me now. So yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about the findings. So across the 3 projects that we engaged with at this pharmaceutical company GSK, it was clear that beliefs, values, and emotions of practitioners about the use of narrow AI techniques in the work were strongly influenced by their perceptions of what was happening externally to the organization. So scientists in different roles described a wider context, and they believe that techniques such as deep learning had overhyped over recent times in the pharmaceutical sector, and from their perspective, this has been driven mainly by big tech. So this hype was a major driver of commercial investment across this sector, and it was creating some sort of pressure on managers to encourage more AI adoption. So there was also a perception from some that the organization felt that this promise of AI was too big a potential opportunity to miss, that senior management in the sector was afraid of being left behind the competition. And this was driving some important decision making. Some participants felt that the commercial hype was in conflict with their scientific values, which included, for example, being skeptical and engaging critically with big claims. And some express frustration at this situation. So while scientists in all roles believe that the models could be useful in some circumstances, they were pleased to say that these models were getting better and better. Many of them also valued what they saw as a sense of realism about what was possible for the techniques to deliver in the sector. So this, for example, is an extract of an interview with a medicinal chemist, and this participant was talking about their engagement with predictive models, and he said, so that these predictive models need to be handled with care, because in his opinion, medicinal chemists with experience can still do a better job than these models in some areas. A number of scientists also expressed frustration at the fact that the hype in the sector was generating this competitive pressure on managers to encourage the adoption of AI techniques, even when they were not delivering the results. And they perceived that some of the claims about the potential of AI were sometimes unrealistic. We also identified that despite the degree of scientific critical thinking across different rules, there was still a sense that a belief system or a relaxed ideology around some of the promises of AI had taken hold in the sector in a way that for some medicinal chemists in particular was not necessarily realistic or desirable. And some of these medicinal chemists felt that it was only valuable to discuss concerns around the use of these models with people holding similar beliefs. So they felt a pressure to conform with the new practices despite the skepticism. They felt frustration and reduced job satisfaction and job motivation on a project that was aiming at full automation, and I will tell you a bit about this case. So one of the 3 projects that we explored involved the full automation of the workflow, and the medicinal chemists on this project, despite they find these techniques useful in some contexts, expressed concern that on this particular project, the non-computational contributions were less visible. And they reflected on how it was important for them to feel that the work was enjoyable, that they could have some sort of independence, and they feel that it was important also that their contribution was valued by colleagues. So in this particular project, they felt that these values were being threatened. And here we can read the words of a medicinal chemist describing how he and some colleagues do some pieces of work to satisfy computational chemist colleagues. They also perceive that humans have more potential for breakthrough creative moments than machines, and are able to see the bigger pictures. And these things were also strongly valued by this group of practitioners. So they find excitement and joy in the work at the lab, and they desire to continue doing these things. So those things that machines cannot do are the things that bring joy and excitement in the work practice. So in conclusion, these 3 themes from our early findings start to tell a richer story than the debates that are currently surfaced in the chemoinformatics literature about how pharmaceutical industry practitioners in different roles feel about the adoption of narrow AI techniques in their workflow. This work also situates these feelings within a broader set of beliefs and values that these practitioners hold about the current hype of AI techniques. And this study has also surfaced a variety of tensions, suggesting that further work to understand and mediate the relationship between AI technologies and practitioners that in a way that satisfies scientists in our role will be of value. So that's all for us.
Thank
so
you.
I'm gonna mute myself and stop.
We've gone a bit over time, so we still have about 2 minutes for questions. Can you either speak up or put it in the chat, please? And I just want to announce, if in case some of you haven't heard, that this was one of 2 papers that received the Best Paper Award from SIG Health. So congratulations, Joe and itself. Are there any questions?
I think there's a
Comments?
hand from Darka, I can see, or is no, I think
No, he's just clapping. Okay, so shall we move on? If we have time at the end, we can also deal with some questions from the chat. Doesn't seem to be any questions from the audience at the moment. So our next presentation is by Anjan Pal from the University of York, UK. And the title is Examining Trust and Willingness to Accept AI Recommendation Systems. Take it away, Anjan. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, thank you, Vuva, and thank you all of you. And I'm completely apologize for my voice is completely chopped. I'm currently based in North Yorkshire, and here the weather changes rapidly in the last few weeks. So sorry for bearing and hearing my voice like this. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here.
Yes, we can see it. Do you want to put it in? Okay, yes, it's fine now. You can start.
Yeah. So hope you can see my screen here. I'm Anjan. I'm a lecturer in marketing from the School for Business and Society, University of York. So today I'm going to present our paper on titled Examining Trust and Willingness to Accept AI Recommendation System. And we all agree that the penetration of AI is everywhere, is not only in the automation industry, specifically focusing on financial sectors, but also in other sectors, for example, the tourism industry, the medicine industry, the car industry. Everywhere now we are basically leveraging on AI technologies. And in the context of stock market investment recommendations, we know that algorithm-informed recommendations are now common, where we have minimum or no human oversight at some point in the whole process. But even though there are some proliferations of AI technologies, we know that we are still not readily accepted to accept AI recommendations. So this is not, I'm not saying that this is the assumption. There could be some sort of acceptance, but there could be some reluctance as well at the same time. And there could be many different reasons for this. Maybe some of us are completely rely on our brokers when we receive some recommendations regarding our stock market investment, or some of us focus on maybe or rely on maybe the peer recommendations that we're getting from our family members and friends in the context of where to invest our money. But how much we can rely on AI is still in a gray area. And as I mentioned, there could be many different reasons, but at the heart of this reluctance is the issue of trust. So we can't completely ignore the trust concept here in the context, and is crucial for the purpose of for the investigation. So when we focus on the trust concepts, which basically refers to the degree to which AI could be relied upon to make our decisions. So this paper focuses on this trust concept and try to understand what could be the potential antecedents for trust. So it could be a kind of delimitations in the context of this investigation. When you see the previous literature, we review previous literature from many different sectors, and we know that trust is a broad concept, and there are many different investigation of trust from many different contexts, but trust in AI currently not well understood. So, and we know that, again, the different sectors, they have different aspects. So it is important to understand trust in AI in the context of a given sector, in the context of a given industry, or for a given purpose, to identify the potential factors that can influence or drive our trust in AI. Because we are talking about a kind of technological agent, it's not a human agent. So how human trust this technological agent could be a crucial investigations here. And second, research on willingness to accept AI recommendation system needs adequate investigations. So we have some literature that are focusing on many different areas. For example, how we accept AI systems in e-commerce, in the context of e-commerce recommendations, in how we accept automations in the context of car industry, how we accept this sort of AI recommendations in medical domain. However, it requires further investigations, how we accept recommendations in the context of the stock market investment decision making. And if we focus on the previous literature, they're mainly focus on algorithmic and technical performances and ignoring the end user's perspective. But it's also important to examine, to understand the end user's perspective, because they don't know how this computer algorithm works. They don't bother about the underlying mechanisms, what is the complexity of the algorithm, but they could focus on the accuracy, the perfectness of their recommendations, so that they can rely on this type of AI technologies. So ignoring end users' perspective is not a way. So we need to investigate how we can basically see how end users perceive the AI recommendations in the context of stock market investment decisions. So here is the proposed conceptual model in the paper. So I will give you some insights here, but for further details, you can refer to our papers as well. So previous research find that attitude is a crucial or is a key factor in determining our behavioral intention. So if we rely on the literature that focuses on theory of planned behavior, they find the attitude is a key factors, and they mostly examine the attitude intention relationships in a variety of ways. However, this paper posits that attitude could also be can be an antecedent for trust in AI. So in the context of human AI interaction, this is posits attitude, trust, and intention relationships for the purpose of investigation. So we propose our first hypothesis, how attitude towards AI is related to trust in AI. So we have a kind of positive. The hypothesis in the positive directions. If the attitude towards AI is positive, then we may have higher trust intention in AI technologies or AI-based recommendation system. So coming back to a second hypothesis here, here we propose that perceived AI accuracy could have a positive association with trust in AI, because again we mentioned that the end users, they don't understand how this complex computer algorithm works. They don't know what is the underlying mechanism. So they look at it kind of from the perspective of a kind of black boxing, right? So they just bother on whether the recommendations is accurate or not. So whether they're basically matching with their actual performance. So perceived AI accuracy from the end user's perspective could be an important factor in determining trust in AI. So we propose the second hypothesis in this way. And for our third hypothesis, we propose that AI anxiety could also be related with trust in AI. And when we see that the technology readiness index and other factors, we know that the technological anxiety is associated with the kind of associations with technology usage, and again we know that there in this type of emerging AI technologies, there can be many lots of uncertainties involved, and there could be some sort of fear or anxiety associated with using those recommendations, where we are basically using our money, and specifically in the context of again in the stock market investment decision-making system. So we propose a third hypothesis that AI anxiety could have a relationship with trust in AI, but it could be negative. So if we have a kind of high AI anxiety, it could create a kind of distrust in AI as well. So we identified these three possible factors that could influence or determine or drive human trust in AI, and which further can lead to willingness to accept AI-based recommendation systems in the given context. And based on that, we propose our fourth hypothesis. So this is our proposed conceptual model. For further details, you can have a look at our papers, or if you have any questions, we can discuss later in the Q&A session. So in the method sections, we first start with the data collection process. So here we employed the convenience sampling methods, and initially we targeted 500 participants, and there are some inclusion criteria that participant must have had some prior experience in the stock market investment before participating in the study, and we get respond from 388 participants, and they took part in the study. However, we received some incomplete responses. So after eliminating those incomplete responses, the remaining 313 complete responses were admitted for the purpose of analysis here. So as we have just seen the conceptual model, we have some variables like attitude towards AI, perceived AI accuracy, AI anxiety. These are the three antecedents that we hypothesize in the context of trust in AI. And we have these questionnaire items, 2 to 3 questionnaire items for each of these constructs for the purpose of measurement. For example, for AI accuracy, AI recommendation systems are not affected by human errors. For AI anxiety, I would feel apprehensive about using AI recommendations. So there are some other questionnaire items as well to capture these variables or constructs here. Also, we have a construct trust in AI. So we have questionnaire items such as AI recommendation systems are reliable, trustworthy, like this. And also the final dependent outcome, the willingness to accept AI recommendation system. So the items used like I'm willing to receive information from AI recommendation system like this. And all the measures were collected in 7-point Likert scales, 7-point Likert scales here. And for the purpose of data analysis, we use the PLS structural equation modeling, and we also conducted the path analysis to test the proposed hypothesis. So if we look at our results, as we mentioned, we collected complete responses from 313 participants. In terms of gender, you can see the distributions here in terms of numbers and percentages. In terms of age, we have average age of 31.50 years and minimum 21 years, maximum 58 years. We captured the education levels, and most of the participants were in the bachelor and master's level, as you can see. And we also captured the stock market investment experience, somewhere in less than 1 year, somewhere in 1 year to less than 3 years, somewhere in 3 years to less than 6 years, somewhere greater or equal to 6 years. And you can see the respective numbers and percentages here in the last column.
Anjan, we're running out of time, so can you wrap up?
So if you look at our results here, we find that attitude towards AI is positively related to the trust in AI, and so this contributes to the literature. So if we look at the TPB literature on theory of planned behavior, they work on the attitude and intention relationships, and here we find some significant association between attitude and trust, and which can further lead to willingness to accept AI recommendations as well. For the second hypothesis, it was also significant. Perceived AI accuracy was positively and significantly associated with trust in AI. And the AI anxiety, we got the significant association, but negative association as we expected here. and towards the trust in AI. So if we have higher anxiety in terms of around AI technologies, then it could create a kind of distrust in AI, and which in turn, that means trust in AI in turn positively and significantly associated with willingness to accept AI recommendation systems here. So these are the key findings that we have discussed. In terms of implications, we have some theoretical and practical implications. So we extend the previous literature on attitude intention relationships, and we establish the attitude trust intention relationship in the context of human AI interactions, while investigating focusing on the end user's perspective, and also augmenting the concept of technology readiness. This paper suggests that negative emotions endangered by AI anxiety leads to a decreased trust in AI. And also, this adds to previous works by showing that trust is an essential factor in consumer evaluations of AI-driven technologies. And in terms of practical contributions, so it is important when we do some marketing campaign on AI-based systems, AI-based recommenders, it is important to foster favorable attitude towards AI, to promote greater perceived accuracies and lowering AI anxiety. So the marketing materials and other promotional material should focus on these factors to help people to make their own decisions in the context of making investment.
Anjan, I'll stop you there because I think we are already 15 minutes in.
Yes, so these are the limitations and future, and these are the references here. Yeah, that's all. If you have any questions, yeah, the most welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been more than 15 minutes. So I think if anyone has any questions, please do put it in the chat and Anjan can monitor that. And if you have anything for the other paper, it's really interesting to see the common threads between the first paper and the second paper in terms of AI adoption and machine learning adoption. We can talk about it maybe at the end. There'll be
if you have any questions,
ones from.
Yeah, if you have any questions,
you
can email me as well. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Anjan.
Yeah.
So it's time to introduce our third paper here. I'm happy to introduce, in fact, my own doctoral student, Indra Mackay, and she is presenting a paper today on part of her PhD findings, which is titled Invested Interest in Their Voice Assistance AI Model, a socio-material perspective on owners' attitudes and experiences. Thank you, Indra.
Thank you, Buva. All right, excellent. Jump right in. Thank you for having me at the ASIS&T Mid-Year Conference. My name is Indra Mackay. I'm a PhD student at the University of Technology, Sydney, and a sessional teaching staff member. So I'll be presenting just some findings from my PhD study. And I do hope to refer you to the full paper in the proceedings to read after the conference presentation. But after this presentation, hopefully you walk away with some understanding of social materiality in the context of voice assistants and people's relationship with information and the interactions through that. And also how we can use qualitative ethnography. I think that was, highlighted well in the keynote earlier, to highlight everyday experiences of AI and information, and how that can be a platform and stepping board for new findings and new opportunities for research. So just a few definitions here, because there are so many definitions used in the literature, but all around, these things are basically conversational agents, chatbots, and a lot of the language is dictated by what the brands decide to call it. For instance, voice assistant is a common term for marketing, and even ChatGPT refers to itself as a large language model instead of a chatbot. But my research really focuses on the experience of talking to one of these devices in your home. So separating yourself from the computer, the screen, the keyboard, and just using your voice. I keep looking over here because my device is over there. But using your voice, directing it to them, gesturing, shaping your information prompts to being in the space rather than being on a computer, on a device. So what do we look at when we talk about voice assistant interaction? So there's a lot of mechanisms behind the device. You have lots of algorithms. You have, the hardware, firmware itself, the software of the brands. For instance, Amazon has their speech model algorithm that will understand my voice, what I'm saying, and then it'll take that through a natural language processing algorithm that will then connect it to an API to bridge it to whatever information source that it needs to connect to. There's also
Indra, we've lost your voice. You've gone mute.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Sorry, I was just saying there's a lot of things behind the algorithm, and you can also connect to a lot of other devices through it as well. There's a lot of audio data and text data that's collected. And I'm sure you would have talked to one yourself. There's often this mismatch of what we think these devices can do for us and what they actually can do, especially in terms of information retrieval. And we find that perhaps, and researchers have found this too, that we end up changing a lot of our own behaviors in order to successfully use the machine. Whereas it's often marketed and touted as, natural language, how like having a conversation with someone else, but it's not really. So in the context of this paper, looking specifically about algorithms and information, what are the companies doing with the data? So a lot of Google and Amazon, for example, put out information online where they try to explain how collecting your data in maybe the speech model from Google, as they tout, or in Amazon's case, it helps them identify people's voices, so it can create a more personalized experience for those using the voice assistants in their home. So there's this sense of that using the device, giving your data, it's going to make it better. And one more thing here is it's not just algorithms that we're interacting with when we speak to our voice assistants, but it's a whole load of our relationship with the brand, our emails, apps, all different communications, social media that we engage with that shapes our whole understanding and experience of this sort of AI relationship with people. So I use social materiality as a lens in this research paper to understand the relationship between people using the device and how that changes the algorithm and code and that relationship back and forth. I really enjoy this example from Oroskalski on social materiality, where she describes, the Google code was written by people. But every day people interact with that code through search engines, and that changes the code in some way as the code develops and takes into consideration like page hits and SEO. It creates like a hierarchy, and in turn, people who then search again through search engines and the code has changed will see different search results depending on what's happened before. So in this way, there's always this back and forth between people and the material code, and this sense of growing and evolution and change. So as I said earlier, that this paper is based off my PhD research, which focuses on these questions, specifically how users create an understanding, and how does this sense making change the way they use the device? And secondly, how does speaking with an AI in this way change the way we relate to the information it provides us and gives to us, or what we give it to them? I'll just take you through the design for this and my PhD research. So I use ethnography to really look at those personal, past, little experiences that come up through people's everyday interactions. In other settings, maybe like a focus group where we kind of force observations, you're not going to get those naturalistic things that happen when someone's just talking to it throughout the day. We captured these stories through some semi-structured interviews, which we held on Zoom because of COVID. But it was actually really good because the people were able to be in their natural space. They were able to have their device there that they usually speak with. And that, of course, let them show me any interactions that they were talking about. And we were able to witness them together again and kind of break them down, researcher and participant, during our interview. This particular case study, which it comes from, is from long-term users. I was very interested in people who have developed behaviors over a long time. So this is more than 6 months they would have to use the devices for. And while I recruited diversely, it's also some unknown factors came up, that people had different amounts of devices in their home, from 1 voice assistant to maybe 5 scattered around the whole house, or people had different household compositions, and this would change the way maybe they would interact with other people together, or teach other people, or be relied on by other people to be the device owner. And that's one more thing too, that the excerpts that I've taken from this thematic analysis happen to be the participants with the most amount of devices. So they shared a similar sentiment of this providing data to be collected in order to enhance user experience. So that's something interesting as well, that not only are they investing their conversations and data, but they've invested a lot of money into creating this holistic home experience for themselves and their families. So there was a range of devices that my participants used. Some of them ranged to having just purely voice and some button interaction to change volume or mute. And then other devices had a touch screen or camera or camera where they could do a bit more functionality in order to interact with the internet through their voice assistants. And of course, this is all shaped and brought together by my thematic analysis on these issues using social materiality and information science as a general lens for this. So I'll take you through the findings from the short paper that you can read in the proceedings. The first theme being this idea of having this shared sentiment of knowing that they're being constantly surveyed and constantly having their data out there, but having this kind of blasé attitude to my stuff's already out there, what's another platform gonna hurt? But not considering that maybe the data collected, audio data is not something that's usually collected by other platforms. And another interesting thought here is that first quote is the different literacies that people have around algorithms and AI, where it's unsure where this participant is talking about the Spotify algorithm or the Google algorithm. So it's interesting that there are many stakeholders that people are interacting with through their voice assistant, but it's all through one voice most of the time. So how are people making difference and making sense of who's providing the information or whose stuff up it is, which algorithm needs improving? This takes us to a second point of the importance of self-reported data in a world of big data. some participants told me stories where they would be asked to rate how well a interaction went. These ones in particular actually were done by the touchscreen or through the app for their Google Hub. And it's interesting how these ways of providing feedback on the AI model are still done through visual methods, and I've experienced myself how this is done through voice. You know, my Alexa will ask me, did I answer your question correctly? And I will say yes or no. But it's interesting that there's a lack of kind of transparency how this self-reported data is being used, is being implemented. And maybe if it's just some more of a performative mechanism to encourage the users or give the users agency in or make them feel like they have agency in improving their AI model. And this leads us to the last finding, so I'll wrap it up and I'm at 12 minutes, where there was this anticipation of change from the end users, that the tie-in of artificial intelligence, there's this shared understanding that it's going to get better, and that can depend on a lot of their personal conversations with their device in their home. They have some agency in improving the model for themselves and for a lot of other people. So this is just some provocations from this small paper, that there's a lot of more questions that come up than answers. And that this is just a small component of my PhD, and you can read more of stuff that I've published. You can look me up on Google Scholar and find my stuff there. And otherwise, yeah, please read the paper. The QR code's there for that, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Indra. There's 2 minutes left for questions. A little bit more than 2 minutes, if anyone has.
I'll leave this up actually. Okay. It's okay, we can chat offline. That's what they say at all the conferences. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn too.
Hi, I had a question, but I can't seem to raise my hand anyway.
Oh, okay. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
So my question was around the discussions that you had around privacy and how people seem to be quite relaxed about privacy concerns, at least the quotes that you mentioned. And I wondered if you got any sense at all of any of your participants who sort of give a sense of, I talked to Alexa about this topic, but I wouldn't ask about this topic or anything sort of along those lines. Is there like a comfort zone for engaging with Alexa?
That's a great question. I think the way the questions I asked them in the interviews didn't lend to those opportunities, but potentially something I would look into more. Me and Biba recently, we're going to publish this for the ASIS full conference. We held a birthday party for Alexa. We had children interacting with her, and it was crazy the types of questions that they were asking in this social situation. Some were very bad. I had to stop the Alexa from talking and providing an answer because it was about death or something like that. So definitely more room for observations and more interviews that would answer that kind of point. But really interesting that everyone who volunteered to be interviewed for my study was the device owner. They weren't like me, who's technologically abled, who would buy one, but not my mum, who's in the same house that uses it, but isn't that one using the app, setting it up, bringing it into the house. So that was something that's limited my research, but there's time for that stuff.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you. There's a question from Noura in the chat. Talking about AI with research in more technical fields, they learned in, they tend to point out that we need to increase people's trust in AI, whereas for me, it seems that we need to trust these tools perhaps too much. We tend to trust them. Yeah, I guess it's that balance of do we want our lives to be easier or trust? But I guess in different circumstances, it's all very different. That's a hard one to answer, Nora. Maybe we could talk more later, and I'll hand it back to Buva, perhaps to the next presenter.
Thank you, Indra.
Okay,
thank you, Nora,
everyone.
for your questions. So our next presentation is by Darko Lastovic from the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Croatia. Doesn't say which university. Perhaps we'll see that on the slide. Yes, thank you. The title is Mental Health Information Seeking of University Students in Croatia. Thank you, Darko. Take it away.
Thank you, Buva. I'm also glad to be here, and I first of all I have to apologize for my English. I didn't speak it for a while, so if I have some mistakes, I apologize in advance. I'm sorry. Okay. For introduction, I will just go just short through a theory that I had read, and much of this information I put in the paper. So I'll just say something which I think is more important for this topic. According to a World Health Organization, mental health and well-being helps people to manage stress, to learn and work well. It can be associated with mental health disorders. And many authors have explored a topic of the mental health, and you can see some of the authors here at the slide. Some authors explored mental health disorders of university students, and they found that some responders deal with anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic attacks, and so on. PTSD as well. And in relation to information sciences, I found some studies that concern with information seeking related to mental health and the role of mental health literacy as well. Some recent studies showed that mental health information are very important for students, and those students who had some kind of mental health difficulties also had or experienced higher levels of mental health literacy. So this is from this we also tried to go to and manage to our research. Methodology, the research aim was to investigate information seeking of university students in Croatia, considering the following research questions. First, why do university students search for mental health information? What information sources do university students use to find information about their mental health? And how do university students deal with difficulties related to their mental health? For this purpose, an online Google survey was sent to university students from December 2022 to January 2023. And it was conducted over social media and over e-learning platform Moodle. Also, the participation in the study was completely anonymous, and the study was also approved by ethics committee of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Osijek. We had 338 respondents in the sample. The data were analyzed by basic descriptive statistics, and some of the main results are presented later. Regarding the demographics, our results show that more female than male respondents participated in our survey. Most of the students were between 18 and 24 years old, and they study in the city of Osijek. Almost half of the respondents were from the field of humanities and social sciences. In relation to frequency of mental health difficulties, our research revealed that most of the respondents indicated that they feel stressed often, sometimes, and every day, as you can see here in this table. Then more than a half of the respondents experience burnout symptoms sometimes and often. Moreover, it was also found that more than a half of the respondents deal with anxiety or depression, but it was in a smaller amount in relation to stress and burnout. These results can be explained by the many academic obligations that students must meet. Regarding information sources for mental health, as expected, the majority of students search for mental health information on the internet, while less than half of them search that kind of information or over social media. Around a third of them indicated they search for information over family members or friends, and around a quarter of respondents indicated that they use print sources such as books, scientific journals, or they consult healthcare professionals to find information about mental health. Similar results are also obtained in some recent studies, which I also used in a theoretical, in a literature review, I mean. In relation to reasons for mental health information seeking, we found that students search for mental health information because they are mainly interested in this topic. Less than a half of them stated that they have difficulties with their own mental health, that they need that kind of information for educational purpose, and or that they look for information for someone else. We also wanted to know what specific mental health difficulties students search for, and results show that respondents mostly search for mental health information related to stress, anxiety, and depression. This is consistent with their answers they gave in a previous question, but also less than half of the students answered they need information for panic attacks, for attention deficit and hyperactive disorder, for obsessive compulsive disorder, for phobias, eating disorder, bipolar disorder, or addictions. A small number of students pointed out that they need information about schizophrenia or self-harm. thankfully. And they rated also their ability to find information about mental health, and results show that they are mainly successful in finding mental health information, and they also think that mental health information are very useful and helpful for them. We also wanted to know their attitudes about mental health counseling. And although a large number of respondents experienced mental health difficulties in the past academic year, most of them didn't use mental health counseling at the university or anywhere else. And they stated that they didn't need that kind of help mostly. Less than half of them answered that they're afraid of judgment and misunderstandings, that they didn't have enough information for counseling, that the service wasn't accessible, or that they have some kind of financial constraints related to counseling. We also wanted to know how they cope with mental health difficulties, and results revealed that most students cope with mental health difficulties by listening to music, through socialization with family or friends. Less than a half of the respondents deal with these difficulties by walking in the nature, through reading books. Some of them use cigarette, drugs, alcohol. They were very honest about this answer. Then a third of the respondents said they exercise, meditate, or pray. Some of them are also cycling. A small number of responders seek professional help or use some kind of apps for concentration and focus. Some of them use pharmacological therapy or use yoga, and a small the least consulted were games, movies, writing pads as a way of dealing with mental health difficulties. I must say that the students emphasized that COVID-19 pandemic really affected their way of dealing with mental health, and they some of them experience that had more difficulties in this area. In conclusion, we realized that studies about mental health information seeking of university students are not much represented in our country. And this is one of a rare study in this area, but also this study has a methodological limitation because participants were mostly from one university and results cannot be generalized. Due to the interdisciplinary approach of this study, the research findings can give valuable insights to mental health care professionals or to counselors. Moreover, we think that universities should provide more mental health support to students by organizing some kind of psychological workshops or including some courses related to psychology in higher education programs. And also we conclude that this research can be further I'm sorry, can be related to examination of some factors that affect students' mental health, like family, society, and some other factors that are important.
Thank you,
Thank
Darko.
you for your attention.
Thank you so much. We have 2 minutes for questions. Anyone? Darko, from my research into kind of mental health with students, I found that bullying and cyberbullying have been a very big factor. Did you find anything at all like that in your research?
Well, they didn't answer directly, but in some kind of informal conversation with students, I realized, yes, this is a problem, and some of students faced with bullying, and yeah, especially over social media.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anjan has a question.
Yeah. So thank you for your presentations. It's a really interesting study and it's a laudable attempt to do investigations around this. And I have a minor questions. In one of your slides, you mentioned that your participants feel that they are successful in finding information on mental health, right? So did you find or did you sense anything from your data that how they feel that they are successful, or what kind of sources they find that is reliable to cope up their situations at their stage? So did you find any insights? What kind of sources they find useful when, because they feel that they're successful in finding information on mental health, right? So what kind of sources they tap on, and how they realize specifically that they're successful in getting information?
Yes, this is their attitude, you know. Mostly they find information over internet, so online. Social networks also are, all social media are one of the dominant sources they use. But yeah, this is interesting, what you said. Although these kind of sources are not so trustworthy and valuable, it is really, I think, the space for another research to see why do they think they are successful, because there are a lot of sources online which are not relevant or trustworthy.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's
Because on the
really,
internet and social media, there are many different sources. Some are credible, some are not credible. But it's important to see what kind of sources they find that useful for them to cope up with. Okay, maybe in some future study
yes,
you can set insights on this. Yeah, thank you for your.
yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you, thank
Anjan.
you for your suggestion.
There's one question in the chat from Ellen Slater. She missed us to the number of participants. I think you had about 300.
338.
338, sorry, thank you. And also on an early slide, you were reporting self-reported problems. And I wondered about depressed. Folks use that characterization very liberally without a diagnosis. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, we didn't want to go through so private information. We just wanted to see a little bit about just depression as a feeling, you know, as emotions, the depressed emotion. And so we didn't consult some mental health expert to go deeper in this issue. But of course, it is also something to important. It's good to explore in future as well.
Thank you so much, Darko.
Okay, thank you.
To do the last paper quickly. And so I introduced to you Yohanan Oanai, who's an independent researcher from Israel, and his paper is Moroccan Jews and Muslims discussing online their mutual heritage, the moderation role of nostalgia on well-being and social network participation. And I'd also like to point out that this was the second paper that received the SIG Health Award today. So congratulations, Johanan. Take it away.
Thank you.
We are going over time, but I hope people can stay to listen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. My paper is about nostalgia in social network, and the idea for this research came while observing the many online nostalgia groups on Facebook and wondering why Moroccan Jews and Muslims born in Morocco talked nostalgically about their shared heritage. As you can see on the left picture, this is a post of a Muslim guy, and he talks about his childhood. And what we can see here are comments from Jews and Muslims talking about how they played this game when they were young. And all these groups declared three objectives: promoting and disseminating the mutual story of the Jewish and Muslim community, but also from the Christian community in Morocco, French Christian usually, renewing cultural and friendship ties, and advocating Morocco as a touristic destination. This is also one of the objectives. A quite interesting fact is that these groups grew fast, were quite respectful, as quoted one of my friends, kind of digital coexistence, successful digital coexistence. And people talk about nostalgia without using the term of nostalgia. They talk about sharing recipes, pictures, movies, events, and customs. About the customs, yesterday was a day of a Jewish feast of the Mimuna, which is a feast at the end of Easter, and which is also known by the Moroccan Muslims, and also quite an interesting moment, quite an interesting gathering. A previous exploratory study from Waknin and Aroni in 2020 analyzed the post in this group and resulted in two main themes: nostalgia and well-being. The current study objective is to understand how nostalgia and individual well-being is related and may increase social network participation. A bit about Morocco. Morocco is a monarchy in North Africa with Berber, Arab, Jewish, French, Spanish, and even Portuguese influences, and three groups left Morocco, immigrated from Morocco in the 1950s. They were the Moroccan Muslims who chose to live abroad, mainly in Europe. They are called Moroccan of the world. And the Jewish communities, which numbered 250,000 in the early 60s, but right now there are only 2,500 in Morocco, and French expatriates. All those religious groups use French and Moroccan Arabic known as Darija, the primary language. But they are also recognized as a diaspora with similar roots, practice, languages, and customs sometimes. Now, a bit about well-being, nostalgia, and ASIS&T, social network participation. Well, well-being is a psychological concept that expresses feelings linked to other emotions, such as life satisfaction and loneliness. And research presented a solid and positive relationship between social network participation and well-being for four primary needs: socialization, entertainment, self-status seeking, and information in social network groups. About the methodology, I used the covariance sampling, and I looked for nostalgia, well-being, and social network participation with four questionnaires: a demographic questionnaire, a social network participation, adapted from the literature, a nostalgia mood questionnaire, and the well-being questionnaire, which is well-known well-being assessment and satisfaction of life scale of dinner. 96 participations, half of them Muslims. Among the Muslims, 69% men, 61% graduates, 67% married, and 47-year-old on average. And about the Jews, 62% men, 51% graduates, 72% married, and average age 65, which are older. And this is explained about what I said before, that they left in the 60s, 70s, or just like me in the late 90s. Now, a bit about nostalgia. An interesting fact was that there was no difference, no statistical significant difference in the mood at the nostalgic moment or nostalgia. It was 3.6 for Jews, 3.7 for Muslims, actually the same. A bit about the factor analysis to understand the construct of well-being and social network participation construct. And here I just would like to say here that the items for well-being had a Cronbach alpha coefficient of 0.84, which is good, and 0.90 in the social network participation, which is excellent. You can see here the question on the social network participation. They were adapted for this research. Now a bit about moderation analysis. Moderation analysis was conducted to assess if nostalgia moderated the relationship between well-being and ASIS&T, social network participation. And to be supported, two conditions must be met. First, well-being must significantly predict ASIS&T, social network participation. And second, nostalgia must increase some of this relation between these two variables. The results, nostalgia was examined at 3 levels: low level, medium level, and high level. At the low level, there were no impact on social network participation. At the medium level, we started with a small impact of social network participation on social network participation of 0.27. And on high level of nostalgia, there is an impact of 0.54 on social network participation, which means that on average, 1 unit increase in nostalgia increases social network participation by 0.27. Now, why this study is important? This is one of the first studies to research and to confirm a positive correlation between well-being, social network participation, and nostalgia as an interaction. This research is novel, as the role of nostalgia in social network participation is quite unknown. Little is known about the correlation of all these 3 variables. The key findings of this research shows that nostalgia contributed significantly to well-being, and that among participation with a high level of nostalgia, we have high levels of ASIS&T, of social network participation. Now, this study is also important because it lays the foundation for further studies, which some of them I'm already working on. Nostalgic content in an online discussion may increase the social network participation of users. And this is important as it could lead to higher time spent on social network. Now, in further research, I would like to research root tourism or genealogy tourism, which means when people talk about nostalgia in social network, and then go on the real life to Morocco, in our case, to research their roots or to research what they talked about in the nostalgia group. Another fact is a digital heritage collection. As we can see in the few last years, there is an incredible amount of unique pictures and memorabilia in Facebook groups, in these Facebook groups, and this is just waiting to be curated. But also we can do further research in soft diplomacy. As we can see, the behavior, the information behavior of the users before and after the Abraham Accords between Morocco and Israel. This research is also important because it focuses on a very, very specific group of successful digital coexistence, as I said, which is, as I would say, an example to follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yohanan. I can see why your paper received an award. Wonderful, very impressive. Thank you. And also thank you for finishing on time. Overall, the session's gone over by about 7 minutes, but I think everyone still has time to have a cup of tea before the next invited lecture in about 7 minutes. So unless anyone has any burning questions for Yohanan, we can close the session. Just looking at the chat, does anyone have their hand up?
Okay. Yes, Angel.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this presentation. And this research is really, really very, very interesting. So, and maybe just as a comment for maybe a future research directions, we do many research on negative impact of social media, right? And this is really how nostalgic content can do something good from the perspective of a social network. And this is really insightful. And one thing that we could investigate further on top of this research, that how we know that on social media, we have many strong ties and many weak ties, right? And when we we know that many of our friends, maybe the childhood friends, we are not in touch now currently on social media. But when we post some old pictures, some old memories on social media, maybe these pictures, these memories could help connect our old friends, right? So in the given context. So maybe you could consider that how this nostalgic content could convert some of the weak ties into the strong ties on social networks, and this would really be helpful to cope up with many different things like loneliness, right? Because people are now moving here and there in many different countries, so it's important to use social media to connect their old friends and have a kind of discussion on it. So maybe you could see how the nostalgic content can convert the weak ties into a strong ties on social media platform. We can get another positive insights from this. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, I can see that.
There's a comment from Sheila on the chat. I was thinking that nostalgia also is something that I enjoy. In my case, mostly reminiscing about the early days of the online industry with people who shared those days with me in the 80s and 90s. Info pros who are friends on Facebook. That's certainly true of many of us. Thanks, Sheila, for that comment. Did you want to say anything in response, Yohanan?
Yes, actually, I can see that. I can see also the comment of Sheila and the comment of Anjan. I can see that how people are going back and going to the good old times and talking about it. But as an information researcher, I can also see the huge amount of knowledge, real knowledge, unique knowledge that is arising from this nostalgia talk. Now, Sheila is talking about talking about people in those days in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, you can find an idea about a new product in what happens in the 80s and 90s, and this happens. And this is why nostalgia is such a great subject to research.
Thank you, Yohanan.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, I think Ellen Sleater says Sheila Ditto, National Online Meetings, Innovators in Publishing. And hopefully in 10, 15 years, we'll be very nostalgic about this ASIS Media Conference. And we'll remember many of us here today. Thank you, everyone. I'll close the meeting now. Thanks, Pamela. And
yeah, thank you, Buba, for coordinating.
Joe and everyone. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.